What was the moment you decided being nice wasn't working anymore? I used to be the person everyone called when they needed something, the one who dropped everything to help a friend move or stayed late at work to finish someone else's project. My boss would text me at 11 p.m., and I'd respond immediately. I'd cover shifts when coworkers called in sick. I'd volunteer for projects no one else wanted to take on. I was raised to believe that kindness would always be returned. For 5 years at Davidson Media, I was the first one in and the last one out. I helped coworkers meet deadlines. I'd bring coffee to the team when everyone was stressed out. I even let my boss, Diane, take credit for my ideas during presentations because she said it would look better coming from management. When my father got sick last year, I asked Diane if I could work remotely 2 days a week to drive him to chemotherapy. She sighed and said, "We really need you in the office, but I think we can figure out a solution for a month or two." I was so grateful that I worked twice as much on office days, making sure nothing was missed. My father's treatment was supposed to last 6 months, but after 3 months, Diane called me into her office. She said remote wasn't working. The team needed me to be physically present every day, and besides, enough time had passed. I explained that my father was only halfway through his treatment. He couldn't drive himself, and there was no one else. She just looked at me until I looked down and said, "I understand." I spent the next week burning through my savings to hire drivers for my father. I was exhausted, constantly worried about him, but I was still the first one in the office every morning. Then the Maxwell project came along, a huge client that could make or break our quarter. I spent weeks researching, preparing the proposal, creating mock-ups, everything. I even missed one of my father's appointments to finish it. The day before the presentation, Diane asked to see my materials. I gave her everything, including my presentation notes. The next morning, I arrived early, excited to present my work, only to find the conference room already full. Diane was sitting at the head of the table, showing my slides to the clients. I stood in the doorway, frozen as she used my exact words, my research, my ideas. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "Oh, good. Jennifer, can you get everyone some coffee? We're just getting started." The client turned, saw me, and said, "Aren't you the one presenting this?" Before I could respond, Diane intervened and said, "Oh no, this is my project. Jennifer was just helping with the research." I got the coffee. I stood in the back of the room and watched as she was praised for my work. The client loved it. They signed a 3-year contract, the largest in the company's history. When the executives came down to congratulate the team, Diane took all the credit. She got a bonus. She got a promotion. I got a $50 gift card to Starbucks. That night, my dad called. He'd fallen trying to get from a cab to the front door. He lay on the ground for 20 minutes before a neighbor found him. If I'd been there, I kept thinking, if only I'd just been there. 2 days later, the company threw a celebration for the Maxwell deal. Diane was presented with an award. I stood up and applauded along with everyone else. Then came the announcement that stopped everything. Diane would now be heading a new division created specifically for the Maxwell contract, and she needed a strong team. She spent 10 minutes talking about the qualities she was looking for and then announced her first hire, Ryan, a guy who had been with the company for 6 months and hadn't made a single contribution to a project. I sat there stunned, while everyone congratulated him. Then Diane looked at me and said, "Jennifer, I need those quarterly reports by the end of the day. I know you won't let me down." Something broke inside me. 5 years. 5 years of saying yes, staying late, missing time with my sick father. 5 years of watching others take credit for my work. 5 years of being good. I stood up, walked into the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. That was it. The moment I decided being nice wasn't working anymore. I walked back into the party with a strange calm I'd never felt before. It was like watching myself from the outside. As I approached Diane, who was laughing with the management team, discussing plans for the new division, I unthinkingly touched her shoulder and said, "I need to talk to you right now." She gave me that condescending smile, the one that said, "Not now, honey. Adults are talking," but I didn't move. I just stared at her until her smile faded. "Okay, Jennifer, what is it?" she said, clearly annoyed. "I think we should discuss this in private," I said, my voice more confident than I expected. Everyone looked at us. She couldn't brush me off without causing a scene, so she followed me to a quiet corner. "What's so urgent that it couldn't wait?" she asked, checking her watch as if my time was worthless. "I want to know why Ryan is being transferred to the Maxwell team when I created the entire presentation, the research, the proposal, everything." Diane's eyes narrowed slightly before that fake smile appeared again. Jennifer, we discussed this. This was a team effort, and as your manager, I decided how to allocate resources. I felt something rise up inside me, something hot and unfamiliar, anger. I'm not talking about the presentation. I'm talking about assigning a team to a contract I crafted. I deserve to be on that team. She laughed. I actually laughed. Credit has nothing to do with it. Ryan has the presence to handle clients. You're more of a behind-the-scenes person, Jennifer, and that's where you excel. Behind the scenes? I repeated slowly. You mean doing all the work while others take the credit? Her face hardened. Watch your tone. It's not productive. We'll talk when you've calmed down. I didn't realize I'd raised my voice until I saw people turn to look. Unproductive? Like the fact that I stayed up until midnight working on the Maxwell presentation while you were at your son's basketball game. Diane stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Jennifer, I think you should take the rest of the day off. It's clear you're not in a professional mood right now. I almost did it. I almost backed down, apologized, and ran like I always did. But then my phone vibrated with a text from the hospital. My father had been admitted after a fall that was more serious than originally thought. Internal bleeding. I looked up at Diane. I'm not taking the day off. I'm quitting. Her eyes widened. What? I quit? I'm tired of being your workhorse. I'm tired of watching you appropriate my ideas. I'm tired of sacrificing my family for this job where I'm not valued or respected. She instantly changed tack, her voice softening. Jennifer, take it slow. You're upset. I understand, but you're a valuable member of the team. I almost laughed. That's the first time you've ever said that to me. Right when I quit. People were definitely watching. One of the executives came over, looking worried. Is everything okay? He asked. No, it's not okay, I said before Diane could answer. I just resigned because I was tired of my manager stealing my work. The entire Maxwell presentation was mine. Every slide, every word, every concept. But Diane presented it as her own. The executive, Ted Wilson, looked surprised. Jennifer, these are serious allegations. These aren't allegations. They're facts, I said, feeling strangely powerful. I have the original files on my personal drive, with the dates they were created. I have emails where I sent drafts to Diane. I even have research notes in my own handwriting. Diane's face went pale. That's ridiculous. She's emotional because of personal issues. Her father is ill, and she can't handle the stress. I felt a surge of anger that she'd used my father's illness against me. This was it, the last straw. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and forwarded something to Ted. You'll find that I just sent you the original presentation with all my notes, including the comments where Diane specifically asked me to remove my name from the speaker section. You'll also find a recording of our conversation last month where she told me, and I quote, "Just do the work and I'll take care of the client. I need this win for my promotion." I hadn't really planned on sending that recording. I'd done it for my own peace of mind, to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, but now it felt like divine intervention that I had it. Diane's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Ted checked his phone, his expression changing as he opened an email. Jennifer, let's discuss this in my office, he said quietly. I shook my head. I'm done discussing this. I'm done working here. I'm done being nice. I need to go to the hospital. My dad needs me. I'm going to email my resignation to HR. I turned to leave when Ted said, Wait, that's disturbing information. We need to deal with it. I looked at them. Diane's face was a mixture of astonishment and fury. Ted looked genuinely concerned. Handle it your way, I said. I won't be here. As I walked toward the exit, I heard several people calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, past the shocked faces of co-workers who had never seen kind, helpful Jennifer stand up for herself outside the building. I took a deep breath. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 5 years. I got in the car and drove straight to the hospital. My dad was pale against the white sheets, but he smiled when he saw me. Hey babe, shouldn't you be at work? I took his hand. They'll manage without me. I'm where I need to be for the next few days. While my dad was recovering, I received dozens of calls and texts from co-workers. Some expressed shock, others support. A few even shared stories of how Diane had used their work too. I ignored most of them, focusing on Dad and what would happen next. A week later, while Dad was napping in his hospital room, I finally checked my email. There was a message from Ted Wilson asking me to call him when I had a minute. Curious, I walked out into the hallway and dialed his number. Jennifer, thanks for calling, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. I was hoping to talk to you. How can I help you, Ted? I asked professionally. Even though I no longer worked there, after reviewing the materials you sent and conducting several interviews, we fired Diane. Her actions constituted a clear violation of our ethics policy. I hadn't expected that. Oh, I said, unsure of what else to say. He continued, we'd like to offer you her position. I nearly dropped the phone. What? The Maxwell team needs a leader, someone who knows the score, someone who's done real work. That someone is you. I leaned against the wall, trying to process this. The promotion Diana had received was now being offered to me. I appreciate the offer, Ted, but I'm not sure I want to come back. There was a pause. Then Ted said, we're willing to offer a significant increase in compensation, full telecommuting to accommodate your family situation, and payment of any back bonuses Diana received for your work. I thought about Dad, about the medical bills piling up, about how, despite everything, I loved the creative aspects of my job, just not the way I was being treated. What about the corporate culture that allowed this to happen in the first place? I asked. Why didn't anyone notice or speak up sooner? Ted sighed. It's a fair question, and we're looking into it across the company. We've launched a review of all management practices and reporting structures. I'm not going to pretend we haven't failed you, Jennifer, but I do ask for a chance to fix this. I told him I needed time to think. Would you be willing to meet in person to discuss specific terms? I asked. He agreed immediately. That night, I sat by Dad's bedside while he slept. I thought about what to do. Going back seemed impossible after my dramatic exit. But starting over in a different place while Dad was ill seemed daunting too. Dad woke up to find me lost in thought. Penny, what are you thinking? I told him all about Diana, about being fired, about the job offer. He listened intently, as always. When I finished, he asked, what do you want to do, honey? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to go back and show them I can lead without being like Diana. Part of me wants to leave and start over. He nodded. Both are valid options, but let me ask you this. When did you feel most like yourself this week? I thought. When I finally stood up to Diane, when I stopped being a doormat. Exactly, he said. You don't have to decide whether to take this job right now, but whatever you do, don't go back to the old Jennifer, the one everyone trampled on. The next day, I met with Ted and laid out my terms. Full remote work while Dad was recovering, a team of my choosing, and most important, a company-wide recognition policy to ensure people were recognized for their work. To my surprise, he agreed to everything. I started my new role the following month, working mostly from Dad's home. While he was recovering, the team respected me because I respected them. We finished the first phase of the Maxwell project ahead of schedule and under budget. Things didn't always go smoothly. Some people who knew the old Jennifer tried to take advantage of me, assuming I'd still be pliable. They quickly realized that while I was fair, I was no longer a wimp. 6 months later, Dad finished treatment. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that he was on the mend. I'd proven myself as a leader, even winning a company-wide innovation award for my new approach to the campaign. One evening, as I was finishing work, Dad walked into the home office I'd set up in his spare room. You know what I was thinking about today? What? I asked. The way I closed my laptop that day at the hospital when you came in after you were fired. There was something different about you, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I smiled. I remember him sitting down across from me. Until today, I cared more about you than I did about myself, worried that you were letting life happen to you instead of making decisions. It took me getting sick for you to finally put yourself first. Tears came to my eyes. I'm sorry it took so long. He reached out and squeezed mine. It's okay. We all learn when we're ready to learn. I'm just glad you learned your lesson while I was alive to see it. We sat in comfortable silence before he added, Your mother would be proud. She never gave anyone a break either. That made me laugh. My mother was certainly no pushover. Late that night, I found myself thinking about the person I used to be, always saying yes, always putting others' needs before my own. I didn't hate this person. She was kind and well-meaning, but she was also afraid of conflict, afraid of disapproval, afraid of being alone. The woman I became wasn't fearless, but she faced her fears. She set boundaries. She demanded respect. And, oddly enough, she got it far more often than the woman who begged for it. The next week, I got an email from Ryan, who I'd never expected. He'd been transferred after I took over, and now worked for another manager who made Diane look like an angel. He asked if I had any openings on my team. He'd heard that I was a fair boss who gave people credit where it was due. I stared at the letter for a long time, thinking about how desperately I'd craved recognition, how I'd jump at any chance to work with someone who appreciated me. Part of me wanted to ignore the letter, to let him feel what I felt, but that wasn't who I wanted to be. Nice didn't mean being a doormat, but it didn't mean being vindictive either. I wrote back by offering him an interview, promising nothing but giving him the chance I hoped someone would give me. Dad saw the letter over my shoulder when he brought me coffee. "You're better than me," he said, grinning. I'd tell him to get lost. I laughed. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I know I can be kind without being a doormat. Now I decide where my boundaries are, not everyone else's. Exactly, he said, raising his coffee mug in a toast to boundaries. And to a daughter who finally found hers. I slammed my mug against his. Boundaries, I repeated, and to not confusing kindness with weakness. It had been a long journey from the woman crying in the bathroom mirror to the leader sitting confidently in her home office, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not even the comfortable invisibility of perpetual kindness. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop being so kind to everyone else. That doesn't mean being cruel. It just means making room for your own needs alongside the needs of others. And that moment in the bathroom when I decided nice wasn't the end of kindness. It was the beginning of self-esteem. And strangely enough, the two could exist side by side, if you were brave enough to make room for both. 2 years later, I'm still at Davidson Media. As director, I've built a team known for both excellence and ethics. We list every member by name on every project, big and small. We've become the department everyone wants to work for. My dad's cancer is in remission. He's taken up golf and constantly complains about his swing. He comes to the annual office Christmas party and tells embarrassing stories about me. Last month, Diana applied for a position in my department. She didn't recognize my married name from the job posting until she showed up for the interview and saw me. Her face went through about 5 expressions in 3 seconds. I conducted the interview professionally, asked the right questions, and thanked her for her time. I didn't hire her, not out of revenge, but because there were better candidates, people who valued cooperation and honesty. As she was leaving, she paused at the door. "You've changed, Jennifer." I smiled. "Yes, I have. Thank you for noticing." She looked puzzled. "Are you thanking me?" "Yes. If you hadn't pushed me to the breaking point, I might never have found the strength. So, in a weird way, you helped me become who I needed to be." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and walked away. That night, I told my dad about the interview. He burst out laughing, slapping his knee. Her face must have been priceless. It was, I admitted. But you know what's funny? I was actually telling her the truth. I'm grateful, in a weird way. He nodded sagely. Sometimes our worst moments lead to our best decisions. I often think about that moment in front of the bathroom mirror. The tears in my eyes, the shaking hands, the absolute certainty that something had to change. It was rock bottom, but it was also the foundation on which I built everything. So when people ask me what that moment was, I tell them it wasn't about stopping being kind. It was about starting to be kind to myself, and that changed everything.